Aloha. When I was asked to introduce His Holiness, of course I was overwhelmed at the idea. And then I began to search for a word for this introduction. And the word came quickly to me. It's superfluous. To people all over our world, His Holiness the Dalai Lama of Tibet is not only the leader of a nation and a faith, but he is also a special servant of our living God. The God who is Father of all gods and all religions. He is not only Buddhist, he is also a respecter of all faiths that embody the truth and goodness, the justice, the grace, the love of our one Creator God, whose name to Hawaiians is Aloha. You and I are very conscious that a great earthquake, man-made, is shaking the foundations of life of this planet. And we look for answers. What can be done to end the shaking? What can be done to change clenched fists into open hands of aloha that reach out in partnership with other hands to build a peaceful world. In the back room, I presented this ukulele to His Holiness. He smiled and he did this. But I give this to him as our special gift from the people of Hawaii to add to his wonderful store of metaphors for peace. That God made His world like His ukulele, some white, some brown, some yellow, some black. All the strings belong. No string says to any other, you don't belong. You must look, act, and sound like me. Otherwise, drop dead. We are nice people in our world. Nice because they believe that if they love children, like Hitler, they are nice. Even though they believe that peace can come only by the non-existence of their neighbor. God has made each string sovereign in its identity, space, and place. The strings are supposed to tune to him, one tuner. Some strings say, no, I set my own pitch. Right there, the ukulele loses what it was meant to be. When all of the strings are taught how to tune to their one tuner, they still maintain their sovereignties, their individualities. But because they tune this way, they harmonize this way. We thank His Holiness for honoring us with His presence. And as He comes in, may I ask you all in silence to stand, please. Now to the God of us all, let us make a joyful noise.
Ente chöki zhōku tēngyā lī yā shūyā lā and the children tango de and shita and Ningji Guang Mandreshe to do Shua.
Brothers and sisters, the first session of my talk today will be on compassion for world peace.
And the tango de introduce Kamisha Prochubati Shakawachula and the Tajana to Shis.
First of all, I would like to express my deep appreciation and also joy for having this opportunity, and also I would like to extend my greetings and thanks to all those who have been involved in organizing this event.
And some of can say it. Chulu Zoche, Samalagi, and Ningji Sedadi, Kachimbuchilia, Ziche, Chulu Samatane, the Logity, Dagana Shinji, Ningji Tambi, Shitsidadi, Chulu Samatane, Tokachimbuchida.
As all the members of the audience here are very well aware that compassion is a very important theme common to all the major religious traditions of the world. Not only that, but also peace through compassion is an aim and objective of all these major religious traditions. Nami Benda on the cover ready, in aging, Tamaji, Shalayaji, Passing Shada, Zawachati, Shuru Tame and Logic. Of course, given the differences in philosophy and metaphysics underlying the diverse religious traditions of the world, of course, one might find different understandings of what exactly is meant by compassion and love. However, what is common to all these major religious traditions in the world is that they are all united in their emphasis on the importance of generating love, compassion, and peace.
Now let me try to speak through my own broken English. Since all different world major religions, so they emphasize the importance of compassion and love and forgiveness. And then on the other hand, I believe for human being, I think the basis of our very survival or existence, and also the basis of inner tranquility or basis of happy life, the compassion is the crucial factor or the very most important factor. So obviously, those people who have more compassionate mental attitude, that person, in spite of difficult circumstances, that person usually retain more calm. Then those persons who have less compassionate motivation or the mental attitude, that is due to small factor, immediately loss mental peace, and sometimes such people easily go to mental frustrations and depression. So the other hand, if the compassionate feeling is strong enough, then that person, when facing some tragic situation, that person still can keep will or determination or hope. So therefore, the compassion also act as a source of inner strength. So now, one way, compassion is something very, very important for humanity. And then, on the other hand, all major world religion, they teach that it's the same subject. So therefore, the various different religious traditions have potential, I think great potential, to serve or to help humanity. Now, in order to do that, the unity or harmony among different religious traditions is extremely important. If among religious people, different religious traditions, as a people from different religious traditions, the lack of harmony or lack of respect one another as some kind of infighting, right? Fighting among ourselves. Then I think that will be great. I think the two ways. I think great damages. One, it of course when religion involved, religion related with emotional level. So once a human being emotionally some kind of disturbed, then sometimes logic cannot go well. Like Bosnia, Bosnia, or some other cases, when the human emotion become out of control, then at that moment, the human being acting like mad. So very difficult to stop. So very, very dangerous. This is one thing. Then another tragic thing is, as I mentioned before, various different religious traditions have I think, great sort of potential to help humanity if the disunity among religious traditions there, then that potential cannot be utilized. Then in the public eye, no use religion. Religion is only the troublemaker. Nothing is useful. That kind of impression people will get. So therefore, the disharmony among different religious traditions is extremely harmful, very, very unfortunate. Now today, I think, generally speaking, the closer, better relation among different religions now is, I think, actually growing. This is, I think, a very, very positive sign. Now, for example, now today here, this very event. Now I'm extremely happy to have the representative or people from different religious traditions. I'm extremely happy. So let us try to promote genuine harmony among different religious traditions. This is something I think not only interest of religious believer, but even the non-believers also. This is something very important. Then about the compassion, as I mentioned before, is because of different philosophy. The explanation about compassion can be different. Now today, I will explain something about this compassion from the Buddhist viewpoint, according to Buddhist belief or Buddhist teaching. First, I think it is important to know the genuine compassion. What is the genuine compassion? People often, I think, get wrong understanding. Those with mind or which feel closeness towards someone, that sometimes people describe it as a compassion or love and compassion. Now, actually, there is a danger, so misunderstanding, attachment, and compassion. The attachment also has the feeling of closeness towards that, and also sometimes attachment also brings some kind of sense of concern. But that not genuine compassion. The reason is quite clear. The compassion, genuine compassion, the mental attitude of genuine compassion is, some kind of unbiased. I think the reason it developed mainly, I think on the basis of the concern of the other person, rather than oneself. The attachment, because that person is close with me, he or she is my close dear friend or something. So because of the reason of me, then they developed the sense of closeness feeling. So therefore, as soon as that person's relation with you, with oneself, changes, that is a closeness feeling no longer there. And towards someone who we have no relation or no contact, or worse, it is someone who are harming us. Towards that, you cannot develop that kind of closeness feeling. So that kind of closeness feeling is actually unbiased, biased and not stable. The genuine compassion is mainly, on the basis of the realization of the other one also is just like myself, who do not want suffering and who want happiness, and also have the right to overcome suffering and to achieve happiness. On that realization, and according to one's own feeling, pain is very uncomfortable, you do not want, and pleasure or happy, you want, you desire that kind of happiness. So from our own experience, they develop some kind of concern towards the other people, other sentient being, and with this sense of concern. Now, that is the genuine compassion. So that is irrespective of what other people's attitude towards oneself. So long that being is a sentient being, who have experiences or feeling. So on that basis is developed that is the closeness feeling with the sense of concern. That's the genuine compassion. Now I explain this to the better. The Ningji Lot Jangduzane, Niala, Semjali, Charles Home, Chori Ching, somebody, Num, did not be dang in Shine, Ningji Jang.
Because of this fact, in Buddhism, when actually an individual is trained towards cultivating compassion, genuine compassion, the first step is to develop a sense of equanimity, which enables the person to have an equal attitude towards all other sentient beings, so that there is no fluctuating emotions or thoughts towards others, such as towards your friends, attachment, towards your enemy, hatred, and towards other people, indifference. So that feeling of inequality has to be first overcome.
Then sem nyamba, 지도자네 sem nyamba tumni ini ko nyingji lo jangwa 이도자네 디 간바디 거 스타바 이나 근데 nyingji 뭐 패지 착외로 내가지 패지 부분이었어요.
So this need for the
developing equanimity as a prerequisite towards generating compassion, what it indicates to us is that within the mental state of genuine compassion, there is a certain degree of freedom from attachment.
다전에 잠바는 인지스 늘잖아요. 낭시기나 낭시 소르다 디모르 셰이잖아요. 대 통발라 미네 아니 대화도 된대로 거들 참았어. 동네 mendu발라 동네 인만이 비어다발라 아니 동네는 자나냐데 로텔라 인지로세.
So such a state of closeness, feeling combined with sense of concern towards other based on this equanimity can have two aspects. One is because of that you feel the wish that the other person or the other being be free from suffering, and that is in Buddhism described as the compassionate aspect. And the other aspect where your wish is the other person to not only be freed from suffering but rather also enjoy happiness, and that other person seek and enjoy happiness. That aspect is described as the loving side.
다로 장유잖아요. 다 되게다 별로 다 지가 대화를 된게 참바다 동네도 전쟁이 되는 인지 그제게 숙심무시 유형다 마용스 돼야지 아니 유심전대라 유심전대 나라야 이동와서 제시 평도 남아 전지야 샤야 중원이나 대체의 참바도 인지로도 숙셔야.
So when an individual actually engages in a very systematic training of cultivating compassion, the success or the extent to which you are successful in developing such a state of mind depends very much on how successful you are in developing an attitude of closeness towards the object. The closer you can feel, the sense of empathy you can feel towards the object, the stronger your feeling of compassion towards that person will be. So for this, in the Buddhist training, reflection upon the kindness of the other person is considered to be very important.
팬들이 산배 근무 유명을 만들래 라라 팬도 주는 대인이 가서래 진스네미도 지금 다 소소리야 팬도 예도 주는 될이야지 자식을 돼야지 이거로 봐 근데 지금 뭐고 생리기 때문에 팬들 취지도 있나요 라라야 팬도 예발라 지 라라야 지디지 녀고 친구 예도 싶어 있나 지 대면에 근무 개발을 요마르디 이내 라라 팬도 예도 굉장히 될 지우치하고 것을
However, reflection on the kindness of other person or other being need not necessarily imply an intention of being of benefit to you on the part of the other person. What is required here is on your part a deep appreciation of the preciousness of the other person. For example, like even in the case of objects, something which we consider very precious to us, on the part of the object itself, we cannot expect an intention of being of benefit to us or being of use to us. But the fact that it is beneficial to us, it is important to us, and it is of value to us, that in itself is enough grounds for us to consider it precious. So therefore, one can develop an appreciation of preciousness of the other person towards oneself, in relation to oneself. However, this is very much related to a very important, perhaps one of the fundamental principles of Buddhism, which is the appreciation of the interdependent nature of reality, things and events.
미지 소소야디 게임망고지리야 되는 건데지 what does that
So when you view the world from this perspective of interdependent origination, we will realize that all our experiences, be it pleasurable or undesirable or painful, we see that they arise as a result of multiple causes and conditions. Not only that, but also even our very existence in the human life, in form of human being, is in itself dependent on many factors. A lot of causes and conditions have to be taken into account. There is a kind of a complexity in reality.
자, today me you jane bana ngaran zo le ya chwa jin ne bana naba jin ne bana da de cha sha na chwa jin ne naba jin yi yin yin do ne da le zi ge ha le de de yan chwa jin ne bana da de naba cha yin zi de che de ji ta le ya kong lu ki ge ya de ene bana nyam ne chen ji ge da ning ji le ya tong du chen yi mi ji ge da ning ji sam ba kong ne kong du pe ya le ya sui lai nyam ne bu ye wei ji ne ene never check never tell 사바냐는 시야기 딱 그거 얘네 가서 그래 그거 뒤다 대내고 찍고야 이거에 있는데 대면에 샤베 있나 대체단되기 바로 그걸로 가야 되면은 대체단되기 라는 사바냐는 시야도 그거 처리해 주는 진실을 내
So this viewpoint of interdependent origination allows us to adopt multiple perspectives on even a single event or an object. For example, let us take a case of someone who we ourselves consider as an enemy. Now, from the point of view of that person's having done something to us, some form of injustice or whatever it may be, we feel hateful or angry, and from that angle we consider the person as our enemy, and our immediate impulse would be to try to retaliate. However, if you take that very same person and look at it from a different angle, that is, say, from the perspective of a practitioner who is trying to enhance his or her capacity for tolerance and patience. Now, what we see here is that because of that person's presence and that person's having committed a particular act, it has given us this wonderful opportunity, which perhaps one could say that only the enemy can give us, for testing our patience, for giving us this opportunity to really practice and enhance our capacity for tolerance and patience. Now, if you look at that person and that action from that angle, then there is enough grounds to feel grateful towards that person instead of being angry and hateful.
So today me use ane nangbe shung raji shung nala ne kana just la na ji seven yamin chiagi be geishini ene das sabat to be raji ten be choice thing on shabe na hala be geishini to le is so do.
Because of that, we find in Buddhist teachings that enemy is the key, the presence of enemy is the key for the practice of patience and tolerance. And because of that, for someone who is engaged in the practice of enhancing tolerance and patience, enemy is the true teacher, the true master.
So today we use ane ngaranzo kana kasore 지 견도녀야 다 디지스데아디 아니 게임망고지 타네 다 용기에 베네지 굉장히 타네 상당히 뭐도 기회관에 타에 무슨 탐제 라라야 라지 뭐도 기회관에 판단해야 되지 얘는 로지 샤야.
So when we are able to adopt a viewpoint where we perceive the interdependent nature of reality, where we understand that our experiences of joy and pain do not come about as a result of a single cause, a linear cause, but rather as a consequence of multiple causes and conditions in a very complex sort of network of causes and events, then we are in a position to really appreciate that all the other sentient beings are in either directly or indirectly or in one way or in another way contribute towards our well-being and towards our even very survival.
다와 딜레기 다 에너지 유심제 타야 다다 유심제 타다 예 민민 에니 동네의 전대 딜레기 다 로들라 닝지스 다 닝지 달라 예 신지 다지 로시 다 좌생기 에니 캬브르레 양 머시 동네의 전대기 로시 임바 충분지라 양지 좌기 경기 에양시 닝지리아 캬바르시리아레 바나 지 선제적 지 다지 가수들이 안데 샤마타고 능신기或者 동네의 자나냐데 근제기 선제성을 인지스 다야 미고 선제데 아니 뭐라지 계지 지비 미다고 정신이고 지 근제기다 거라 유심생이 되게 캬바르 지 상당히 딘데를 심배관에 에네 동네의 잔디로 기인산에 베네처를 인지스 다디네 유심전 타남 에네 담배 동어인거 에네 네바창 담배 동의 정신이 주 네바창이 딘데를 심배관에 에네 동네의 잔나냐로 기인산에 미미를 인지스 좌지관의 인지가 수시하시
So based on such an appreciation of the complex nature of things and events and causes and conditions, and also your appreciation of the preciousness of all other sentient beings, once you develop a genuine sense of concern towards other sentient beings, regardless of what your relationship to that person may be, that is said to be, and also when you develop a genuine wish, a spontaneous wish for the other person to be free of suffering, that state of mind is defined as compassion, genuine compassion according to Buddhism. However, within that compassion, there could be many different types, depending on what motivating factors and complementary factors there are. One's compassionate mind would be a state where your mental state is where you simply wish the other person or other being to be free of suffering. Then, however, there could be a slightly more deeper experience of compassion where your compassion is influenced and also complemented by the realization of the transient nature of the other person, how that other person is even momentarily changing, subject to causes and conditions. And that is, then further still, there could be a more deep, a more profound experience of compassion where your compassion is not only motivated and conjoined with this realization of the transient nature of the being, but also the illusory nature of being, that the fact that the being, that person who, although wishes happiness and shuns suffering, but is bound, caught himself or herself in a state of bondage because of his or her grasping towards an autonomous existence or self-existence. So that realization of the illusory nature of the object further increases one's capacity for compassion towards that object.
Yang Yingziliya, 동네의 그게 딱 동네의 자나냐인데 딱 로 얘기들이야. 지 동네의等于다 동네의 세월 차냐인데 항상 리뉴 되는 인식이. 달리 이제 전부 쓰이야. 아 이제 동네의 자나냐인데 로 잡아야 다 가서래. 닝지당 닝지스다다. 다는 지금은 세매의 닝지스다. 다들 항상 리뉴 닝지스 전에 닝지 나는 닝지 shumshim부시기. 다다 동네세야 대화도야等于차냐인데 다시 닝도 캬버지 전용의 직장용과. 자, 그래 뭐 이제 닝지야 당시 닝도 치지 못하네. 캬버지 인비서.
And also, when that compassion, and genuine compassion towards others, the spontaneous and genuine wish for the other person to be free of suffering, it could be further enhanced and developed to a point where the individual feels a spontaneous sense of responsibility to shoulder upon himself or herself the task of freeing that person from suffering, liberating that person from suffering. And such type of compassion is said to be a very powerful state of compassion where you feel automatically, you feel naturally and spontaneously drawn towards an active engagement in a task of actually liberating that person.
저 좌다 제 싫어고 좌다 제가 거네 아니 닝지 권에 가도 배고요 닝지 삼부 찍고부터네 남 멋있게 또 지시실 라 이거데 이네 코바 타면 해야리야 좌 싫어고 쓴데 거네 조금 있어요.
So I forgot to translate one point, which was that at that stage, your compassionate mind also has the capacity to enhance a sense of courage and confidence. And what is crucial here is that, according to Buddhism, there is this understanding that enhancement and development of the compassionate potential cannot come about only by simply thinking about compassion all the time. What is required here is the complementary factor of wisdom and insight. It is only when compassion and wisdom are conjoined and when unified that one will be able to develop the compassionate potential to its fullest extent.
근데 이제 시작해 버렸습니다. 근데 닝지 저는 가지 이모션 시작해요. 그래서 이모션이야 낭식이 균전 데미지가 균전 매로지 균전이 가서가 실샤는 균전 그 안에 any emotion 게임이지. 균전 매로 거르지가 나 컴백 박자스는 지든지 그 안에 any 게임의 이모션이지. 다음에는 당연히 네거티브 이모션도 포지티브 이모션에 대하여 패지 균전 매로 안에 지금 균전잖아. 디세게 하게 되네. 그런 식으로 합하려야 에너지 차단을 얻게 돼야 이모션이 네거티브 이모션 처리하래. 디가는 내가 차이야. 다 이모션 집은 인지도 없지. 균전 시선 그 사를 집에 처리 디성이 내버리니 이모션이 되는데 균전 때문에 이모션 차이야. positive.
Perhaps one could to use the word emotion in a sort of a rather broad sense, one could put it in this way, in the following manner. One could perhaps say that if we examine the nature of emotion, there could be of two types. One is emotion which could be called a reasoned emotion which can arise on the basis of a rational power, rational thinking, and another type of emotion which is purely instinctual and arises as a consequence of impulse. So many of the emotions which belong to the second category, which is impulsive, instinctual nature, like attachment, strong desire, or hatred, or anger, and so on, these tend to be very negative and bring about mental disturbances and so on. Whereas you have other types of emotions like compassion, which because of its being emotional nature, it is powerful, yet at the same time it has grounding in reason, in that the more you think about the nature of that emotion, the more you analyze it and the more you develop it, because it is grounded in reason, there is a capacity for enhancement, there is a capacity for increase, and that type of emotion could be said to be positive emotion.
다전에 균전 된데 로지베이나 로텔이야 에네 개개면체 그다지 검지 때나 코바타메 되어야지 유기에 그래. 다양 로지시 균전 메르지베이나 로텔이야 코바 때나 그다지 코텔이야 지능시 현시 예외 차네. 코바 타메도 페이스로 피하네지. 단 개개인의 제 튠지 여den이지 로지 코바 싱나 코바 타메도 피하요시.
So this type of emotions which are grounded in valid reason and experience, these also have a unique feature in that when you develop them and when you enhance their capacity and potential, they have the possibility of being able to be developed almost to the point of limitlessness. One could sort of develop them to their sort of limitless potential, whereas other types of emotions which have no grounding in a valid experience or reason, which are purely instinctual and impulsive, no matter how you develop them or enhance them, because they lack such support in valid experience and grounding, they don't have the potential to be enhanced limitlessly. And not only that, but also they can be removed, they can be eliminated from within one's mind.
Then, combatament payagi, that the shake is done, any tea, Jumzilia, the other day, any young is the lady. Curtis is the winner. Penangaranzo, Lurch, Chakudi, Sugup and a Pungu genetics of the Dig and a Pungu, dead some with honey, beyond the Bashivina, Sechi, touching. Mashi Sheva slips and Chevalia, Seri Chevalia, Tara Mangushi, Seri Sheva Manguchi, the Pungu, any Odaji, Duzil Dene, beyond the energy set. The Yidi, Sechi touching. That Pungu and a Duzil, Ted, deep and a Hedging in the chair, but a deep Hedging in the chair. Our Seri more, Chimaji Kia, that's in Yeling, to say, these in the Mame, Unish Mashana, Mimishi, then Nabed skill. So that the name is Shiva Tamuji, Seri Shiva Saji, Yevachen, Unish Yevachen, Te, any Pungu Duzet, Chinese and a deity, Dagenam, Tijin, any Shiva Rakodam, Giaji, beyond the Harva. So there's all in this and the Kunji, any Shiva, Tomabe, young or to you. The name you then some temperature, some Tamolia danding, series some similar danding in Chigi, Yimbatan. The dandy and a Sechi Tajama, the Yawa Union on the nation, but you do combatant figuration.
It is in this relation to the issue of the possibility of developing these positive emotions and thought to their limitless state that the question of rebirth comes into focus in Buddhism. And how this is explained is that in Buddhism there is this understanding that although many of our conscious thoughts and emotions, especially those at the perceptual level, the sensorial level, although many of these states of mind and consciousness come about as a result of interaction between various physiological factors and chemistry. However, there must be an underlying entity, for want of a better word, underlying entity which allows the continuation of this consciousness or continuation of this mental faculty to carry on. And in Buddhism, there is this understanding that it is this subtle consciousness which enables, it is the subtle continuum of this subtle consciousness which makes it possible for conscious sensorial states of mind to come about. For example, when sensory faculties come into contact with external objects, what we experience is this sensory perception. And the sensory perception, for example, like a visual consciousness, has this not only in its content, the object, which is external, but also it has a phenomenological character, which is purely in the nature of experience, mere experience and knowing or awareness. Now, there must be something which allows for that awareness to take place. This phenomena of consciousness cannot be explained purely in physical terms, and this continuum is what is carried on from one life to another life. And once that is established, then Buddhism argues that these reasoned positive emotions and thoughts, which have this subtle continuum of consciousness as the basis, and when they are enhanced through successive lives, then they can be developed to their limitless point.
Shiva Chandu, Shiva Dungi Ding, any cosmology shall be shape.
And also in Buddhism, it is in relation to this never-ending and beginningless continuum of subtle consciousness that even the cosmological phenomena is explained.
She didn't a yana, but didn't come China and a yana Gumi giver. Gumi Lubu giver. In a Halam Kalam.
Otherwise, one is forced to adopt a position where the evolution of the cosmos has to be either accepted as having no cause or having come about without any reason, sort of spontaneously. However, according to Buddhist thought, in Buddhism,
some ancient Indian thought.
Some ancient Indian philosophical schools, including Buddhism, they find it difficult to also explain the cosmological phenomena on the basis of a belief in a creation.
That the little young bear, Zao Shay, the city simply, any Daji, Korangi, and the city and Molia, Chimela nature. Tell you the nature.
So, this continuum of the subtle consciousness, which is in the nature of mere experience and awareness, which carries its continuum from one life to another life, that faculty, entity may not be a good word, that faculty is called in Buddhism the Buddha nature, the seed of enlightenment. And also the ultimate nature of that mind, which is empty and essenceless and absent of intrinsic reality, that ultimate nature or empty nature is also called the Buddha nature, the capacity for enlightenment. Because mind is ultimately empty of intrinsic reality, mind is ultimately absent of intrinsic identity and existence. The notion which holds on to the intrinsic existence and identity of mind is considered to be the fundamental ignorance underlying suffering and underlying our illusion.
So that the Tenjung Siddhari, Tandadi, Chapter Simba and it turned it that way in Ranshi Motoris and Tunisia.
So, when the understanding of this fundamental principle of dependent origination is taken further and developed to its most profound level, then the interdependent nature is understood in terms of designation and labels, which sees the world in terms of mental construct, a phenomenal world in terms of mental construct. So this points towards understanding of world and events as being empty of intrinsic identity and existence.
화나나 문자 요구하는데 이제 조디 동바 땡중 동바 당시야디 계속 참.
Generally speaking, although this doctrine of emptiness, shunyata, we find diverse explanation in Buddhist teachings. What is, however, most important is to be able to understand this doctrine of emptiness, shunyata, in terms of dependent origination, and understand dependent origination in terms of emptiness, vice versa.
다양한 아주 디스트와 그러나 동해 민들이 있잖아요. 아니 닝지 관나 소설 동해 예배 탈이야. 다른 생기 동해의 승부 남배스네 있잖아요. 아니 벌써 뭐지고 체인도스. 야 되게 야 조지리고.
However, when talking about developing compassion, one point which comes up and often people ask is that one phenomenon that seems to be the case is that when you enhance your capacity for compassion and when you generate compassion towards a suffering being or suffering person, what seems to be the case is that it seems to add on to your own misery and to your own suffering. So the question arises, why should I burden myself with an additional suffering and pain?
다 들려야 낭배중 가는 세계야. 아니 나랑서 장들이야지 동네래야기 그러나 동네디 아니 당불래 버지 매매 이루잖아요. 디 있으면 무슨 무슨 용되야. 그러나 장기 동네 나리네. 그러나 지금 동네 시야서. 그러나 딘데게 타네 동네 당불래야기 삼루시 게임이 중원이나 동네 중부 찍어야 삼루 철저하게 동네의 서비스에 개발하는 것이 이어져요. 그래서 근데 이번에 다 현재 동네의 아니 달려야지 균쟁이 타네 균쟁이 시에는 이 타네 이 현재 동네 야 민주를 로변다 미술을 로지 게임이잖아요. 로디 차신의 동네의 당로라면 로지 차네요. 인도잖아요. 디 현재 동네 삼연도 그러나 랑게 삼이야 그러나 아버지 혈을 지어야 되는 현재 동네 좀 타고 삼연도 디 내가 별이야 소소의 생 시들고 템블지 요어의 친구서 체비할 때 이내 디 지sem드마도 가서 그럴까 내가 소식 동네 관 내가 소식다 sem드까지 가서 그게 왠지 톰 되면서 미쳐 디 sem드 딩데도 풍셔야 되는 거다 sem드 딩데도 가서 그게 간다 sem드님도 그렇고 현 요어면 되지 용되기도 봐. 그래서 드레이브 이르잖아요. 현지 동네 삼리 디네글이야 sem다시 sem리야데 쿨지 승구는 지지듯이 레벨이 이제 sem이 딩디 땀부셔 주게 되는 것이다. 좋아야 되는 차이. 이렇게 말이야.
However, to this problem, Buddhism responds by saying that if we examine the nature of our response towards suffering and pain, what seems to be the case is that in many cases, when we face sufferings and painful situations, many of these pains and sufferings are something that we are, in some sense, we have no say. You know, they are not voluntarily accepted. You know, we are simply confronted with them, and we simply have to face them. So there, in some sense, there is no choice. And because of that, there is a sense of lack of control over your life, and that makes it makes you feel as if you are totally being overwhelmed and you are in a state of helplessness. This, however, is not the case with the painful experience that you have when you share in other people's suffering, because what happens there is that you are consciously and deliberately and willingly taking upon yourself someone else's suffering. And in that case, although at that initial stage, of course, there will be a certain degree of disturbance of your calmness of mind, your peace of mind, because of having to think about other person's suffering, having that empathetic sort of feeling. However, underlying that experience is a very strong state of alertness. You are alert, and also there is no sense of being overwhelmed and being helpless, because you have consciously and deliberately taken upon yourself that suffering. And because of that, there is also a sense of courage and confidence beneath that will. So that in reality is not really an additional pain or suffering, but rather it enhances your capacity for endurance, and the pain that you have, the disturbance that you have from taking other people's suffering is totally different from the sense of helplessness that you feel when you're faced with your own pain and suffering.
So that is about compassion from the Buddhist explanation. Yeah. So now, as a conclusion, of course, I have not much experience about this compassion. But still, I'm trying to develop these noble experiences. So according to my little experiences, these has a positive mental development comes. It really gives me some kind of inner strength, and that act as I think basis of inner peace. No matter how the situation is difficulties, the person can remain calm. And as a result, I can utilize my what I call the wisdom or the intelligence side, or judgment can utilize properly. The other hand, if my mental state remains in frustration or fear or less self-confidence or hatred, then of course they not only lost my own inner peace, but also one of the precious thing of human being. That is the power of judgment. That also cannot function properly at that moment. So therefore, irrespective whether believer or non-believer, within believer, whether Buddhist, whether Christian, whether is Muslim or Judaism, and as a follower of any major religion, there's no differences as far as the practice of compassion is concerned. So therefore, if we practice, if we put some effort on these inner development, eventually you will feel some kind of change, some kind of benefit. So therefore, if you feel some of this is my explanation, goes in your mind, then try to implement. If you feel not much interest, then no need botheration, just forget it. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. At this time, if you have any questions, would you please pass them across to the aisles where ushers will collect them and bring them up, and His Holiness will try to answer as many as there's time for. I'm told that there is one question while we're waiting to gather the other questions, and that is, if feelings of anger come up in you, what can you do to deal with those feelings? What practical things can you do when feelings of anger come up?
When anger comes, at that moment, sometimes very difficult to control. It depends how often the anger, what type of anger. But a long year, but Shiraga, somebody later could do Pazi could do the Nimutea Kawari. Delay, then the simply because of the Shadamba and Chabuki, they were simply Lumutan Molia. any party we are Tashida, Dene and some
Although there are different degrees of anger and its intensity, however, what seems to be true is that when you are actually in the state of anger, in a fit of anger, at that point it is almost impossible to try to employ any antidotes. So what is more effective here is to try to seek ways or means by which you can bring the level of your emotion down to a more sort of neutral state, so that then you are in a position to begin thinking about its antidotes.
Some longer than one real Tashilia, and a condus I say you the Salmadan session, some stash down. Young men, some Madan, who could do the Udon dash. Different Shuzugama genius, Udon, Yang some Tabin to give some Dosman to.
For example, that one of the methods of trying to bring the level of your emotion down to a more sort of calm and neutral state, one of the methods is that when you are actually in the fit of anger directed towards a particular object, at that point, instead of feeding on the anger, keep thinking about it, it is more effective if you try to divert your attention to something else, a totally different object or matter, so that there is in itself an immediate reduction from that plane of mind down to a more calm state. Another method is at that point to try to do a breathing meditation for a minute or maybe two when you are in the fit of anger. Then stop thinking about it and then simply take a deep breath and concentrate on your breathing.
In the Giga, the Condor Marshall, Dosma, Chasuna, any shine, you day, Pemberman, Sangberman, Sangber China, Yanchi Samdamina, Zawaji, Chakainebo, or relative from Shade, go Deso, Social Dene, go Numdu Manaji, Lord Chaya, Sotokuba. So the name is the Digital, any Leo Marshall Dos, Condor Marshall Dosma, Chasuna, any Lucian Samdamina.
So when through these means, once you have taken the edge out of that anger or brought reduced intensity of that emotion, then one of the things that you could do is to try to look at that object or being from a different angle, because things being relative, there is nothing absolute. Someone being absolutely bad or absolutely right. So, of course, that person or that being will have multiple perspectives. So, try to look at from a more positive angle, and then that will help you further reduce your anger.
Kunzing been assembly, Nimi, Gotuman and Samta. Condom Mele, Chamber assembly, Paying Gotuman and Samta, and assembly Ding Nishiro, Dos Jevina, the Chisholm Yellow Trevi, Condo Gibson, Shushunja, Hamone.
However, what is most important and perhaps what is most effective is the normal attitude that you have towards these emotions, your outlook, as it were. If you have an outlook or an attitude towards this anger and hatred and these more sort of afflictive emotions as being destructive, dangerous, harmful, and you have a positive attitude towards their opposites, such as love, compassion, and kindness, and so on. If that is your basic outlook, then this in itself will give you conviction in the destructive nature of anger and hatred and so on. And this in itself will have a marked influence on your emotional state, so that even when you have anger, when you feel angry, there won't be that there won't be this intensity, this sort of piercing edge because of your basic attitude towards it.
그게 팬들의 임시당의 시지 나 3년 단계 난 넘주 잠을 뒤들이야 팬들의 정신이 도나게 친구가 그 될이야 신곡을 당시에서는 지금 난그 3년 넘주 잠을 뒤들이야 그다 지고 당시에서 패배는 이제 갈까도가 내배는 이제 갈까도가 그 양의 양도 당시에서 뒤 생들 랑샤로 지어가 있는 그 때문에 잡았어.
The problem is that normally we are rather indifferent towards our negative emotions. We somehow our basic attitude seems to be, oh, these are natural states of mind. They come about spontaneously. They are natural fluctuating states of mind. In some sense, they may be okay. So that is the basic attitude that we have towards them, and we don't take the destructive nature of these emotions seriously enough. It is if we, on the other hand, have a very firm basic standpoint towards them, a firm stand that these are destructive, these are undesirable, these are emotional states which are worth being reduced, then of course this will naturally change our reaction when we actually find ourselves in a state of emotion, intense emotion.
As a result of compassion, is it true that we should not kill anything, including insects like cockroaches and ants?
This is very true that compassionate principle must be expressed in this behavior where you abstain from killing all forms of life, including insects.
Yes, that's true. But for me, you see, the mosquito sometimes is really.
Thank you. Let me take it one step further. As a society which practices compassion, can we exercise capital punishment against a murderer or a killer?
In this regard, I would like to state that the Amnesty International is campaigning for the abolition of capital punishment, and for this campaign, I've given my full support, 100% support.
나는 시각 때문에 저 뭐만이 지 원하라는 소리. 그다음 하루를 쏘아야 돼. 네버 치고 해야지. 시제가 사전을 되니 나도 상관없지. 난 배우는 시행이 봐. 지 녀모도 수수셔부지 예외 쉬고 다시 네버 쳐야지. 심을 되는 나도 상관없지. 에너지 네버 쳐야지. 심을 예외 차는 상담에 있는 난소에 가지다 쏘던 거가 제일 해. 어따 그는 네버 무엇을 그는 네버 퇴행이 미지. 그디 네발이야 만주 치든 셈이 그 미상고지를 줘야 게 차지 되네. 그래서 대찬에 그는 네발가 시위사대 밑에 로스다. 그 그거 때문에 미상고지 셔야 그 차지 예배 있잖아요. 그 가게 맞아 그는 다 납세잖아요. 근데 좀 제야 맞죠.
I normally tell people partly seriously, partly as a jest, that if the main grounds for justifying capital punishment for criminals is that they have this negative potential, this extremely destructive, dangerous, harmful potential, then from the Buddhist point of view, so far as the presence of that potential is concerned, all of us have the same potential. So then that means that all of us are theoretically sort of possible to be condemned as well. And if the main ground for justifying capital punishment is that someone has actually committed a crime, murder and so forth, then again here I would argue that that person has the potential to be reformed. That person has every potential and capacity for being reformed into a responsible citizen. So even from that point of view, there is no justification which would really substantiate this argument that capital punishment must be adopted.
Thank you. Let me read this last question. Maybe some of us can identify with it. My mind seems so cluttered with thoughts of the past, fantasies, often fears of the future. In the course of a busy day, may I ask respectfully, what is the best method for processing and fully appreciating the present moment?
그런 사람들이 생생상 그 템버 세위에 같은 마음에 남도 몽고 사람들이 생생상 미과체.
So in a way, such a person, who has this continuous sort of recollection of past experiences and anticipations about future events and so on, that person clearly demonstrates being a true human being, because that's the mark of possessing human consciousness.
따이네, 라, 디디 대외 찬소리 마당제, 마음에 남도 가게 매우제, 톰이 대외에는 야호야.
Having said that, also trying to develop a state of mind or state of being where you totally prevent arousals of reflections about one's own past experiences and also anticipations of future events and so on, and simply being aware of the present moment. That also is just always simply being aware of the present. That also is not really desirable.
다 대외 양용들이 찾아찬 마음에 남도 먹지 텐트에 타네 에센 시티 모두자가 되겠죠.
What is crucial is to try to develop a state of mind where, while fully being informed of the past experiences, while fully being aware of the experiences that have been gained gained in the past, and also being fully aware of the future possibilities and having that anticipation, still having the capacity to be aware of the present, to be attentive to the present, and also retain a calm and stable mind. That is what should be sought.
In a way, the things are momentarily changing. So if we investigate hardly no present, only past and future. Isn't it? So therefore, the present means something just merely designated. And also, without the present, there cannot be past and the future. Past and the future compare with present.
The very notion of past and present has to be understood in relation to a framework where present is like the reference point.
다 리그지래. 야지 심 그거데. single pointness. 다 디안에서 그래.
So again here, one's basic outlook on life and existence will also make a tremendous difference in whether or not these fluctuating thoughts and emotions that repeatedly occur and occupy our mind disturbs the basic calmness or presence of mind or not. Here again the basic outlook will differ a lot.
single pointness.
However, here, development of single-pointedness of mind, that faculty, that is quite a different issue.
다 디삼던데 다지 대외 첨바이 받치니까 마음에 차르지 남도에 끼어모주체 다대 시바 소모 마주 대양을 해내야지 뭔지야지.
Because when the individual is engaged deliberately in the cultivation of single-pointedness of mind, then in that state, during that session or in that state, what is required is the person to be able to not distract herself or himself by thoughts of the past or anticipatory thoughts of the future, but rather being able to totally or fully be attentive to the present and also be fully and totally aware of this mere experience, this mere knowing nature of the mind, and be attentive to the present. And that is a specific type of training.
But
Generally speaking, one could say that our thoughts and concepts and so forth, they in some sense obscure the basic mind. So through training, when one prevents or seizes the conceptual thought processes, what is experienced is a kind of mere luminosity, almost like a sense of vacuity, which could be said to be the nature of mind. However, this vacuity, this experience of vacuity should not be confused with what is called emptiness in Buddhism. However, if you are able to prolong this experience of this vacuous state of mind, this vacuity, then of course the basic luminosity of the mind will become more and more clear to your consciousness. However, the main factors for a successful development of such single-pointedness of mind, focused on the nature of mind, is there are two main factors. One is being able to identify the mental excitement and mental sinking, which normally obstructs our single-pointedness faculty to operate fully, on the one hand, and then another factor is mere familiarity. It is only through constant familiarity and training and meditation that one can expect to achieve a state of single-pointedness.
Thank you, Your Holiness. That's all the time we have for questions. And now we're going to have our short intermission. This intermission is going to be very brief. There's only going to be 10 minutes before reseating will start. So we suggest that you stay at your seat and just take a stretch break. If you do need to get up, take all your personal belongings with you. And finally, If you need to go, we don't want you to go outside, but if you need to go outside, or if you do, take your tickets with you, and you can return only through the front doors. I'm going to talk about reseating in about 10 minutes.
다 선지 다야 도마송야다 즉 animation 함재지 송야 다야 지구의 선지의 잠전에 내가 말한 수용죠.
The ceremony today is that of generating the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta. There are generally three types of this ceremony, which would include actually taking the bodhicitta vows, which is the highest form, and then the second form is where you not only generate the mind for enlightenment, but also you take a pledge that you will uphold it, and the third one is a mere aspiration that you develop in the ceremony. However, the ceremony that we are participating in today is where we are developing this aspiration, which is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Since we don't have much time, the ceremony will be rather brief. Actually, according to the schedule, we are almost at the point of ending the session. Actually, what is happening is that we are just beginning the session. The ceremony will be preceded by a recitation of some prayers. What does this prayer involve, recitation involve, is reflecting upon the great qualities, wisdom and insight and compassion of the Buddha, and also reflecting upon the essential teachings of the Buddha.
Temba sanje chimden de be jawa shakya tuwa la chaza lo chodo jezo shiwa temba dishin shiwa la chimba yang tawa zobe sanje riwa da shakso temba dewa shiwa jiden jemba jibo de la na meba la na me nam je temba sanje chimden de be jawa shakya tuwa la chaza lo chodo jezo shiwa 남다 공아 저도 소상와 예시에 자도 스르게론바 자와 제대 소나랑야와 공부가 정해 결하자다 선저 된바 되면 다외셔 선도 되어 결하자다 두려 두려 세바 수마제 냐메 전제 결하자다 공부 도지 세대 마 탐제 전배도 뭐 소나연대 저도 현대신 신라자다 다배 되저 되어 요계행에 손을 시도 된담서요 마시죠 전라자다 전에 저의 남양대 라바 달라르도 신계 담바 연대 근대 나야자다 이과 제야 메자신 개와 표선 자마 랑게 선내 용소대 리네 상계 담바 까마르리 마메다 주마스와 주고 메나라다 진다 모디제 전나다다 선남디 탐제스바 호방도내 준견다 가나나다 시베라루 시베솔레 로로
다시는 이거 때문에 미션이 못 되게 다시는 이거 안 되는 거지. 다시는 이거 수만
Normally, when I have time, I normally recite at this point Heart Sutra. But today, since we don't have time, we will recite the mantra of Heart Sutra alone.
Gade para sam gade buddhi so Dayata gade para sam gade buddhi so Dayata gade para sam gade buddhi so Shira paru chima ke menga nage ngo Sosora le yishe jiyo ke sung jaya yung sha se
다데 나버즈 아니 심지기 내가 모두 지하는 전에 상담하시 나버 맹연즈 위트니스 주시기 나버 맹연즈 위트니스 주시기
Now that the actual ceremony has begun, amongst the audience, those who consider themselves as practicing Buddhists, you should fully participate in the ceremony in that you do the repetitions, you do the visualizations that I ask you to do. And those who are not practicing Buddhists, you can observe and be present here as a witness to the ceremony.
But any Manazo Dani, Nedelea, Double Shajasengi, anything in my Chanita, Industry was also just how long years and check.
Now, visualize at this place where we are participating in this ceremony of generating the mind for enlightenment. Visualize the presence of Buddha Shakyamuni and also the great masters of India, such as Nagarjuna and so on.
And the Rana Tawalia, Kissinger Tajalia, years of the Dagi, any Nanzuya Championship.
And imagine yourself being surrounded by all sentient beings and reflect upon their situation, their fate, and also upon their suffering and pains and so on. And then directing your attention to these sentient beings who are around you, then reflect upon what I said earlier in my previous session about compassion and love. So reflecting upon the sufferings and pains of these sentient beings, you develop compassion, the wish that they be free of sufferings and pains, and then reflecting upon the fact that many sentient beings, although what they desire and seek is happiness, they are lacking in happiness and joy. So develop the loving kindness which aspires these sentient beings to enjoy happiness and joy.
No. And the little bit of Shabbat and Yuji, La Lopa, said they were funny. And döne yewe da dishi shewe ene kusundu yan den chaba chene dishi shewa den ene da rang kansa tame ba ji gyön yu 공부 yin den ji ene gale le ya yan den ge chwa ya ka so le ge jang zun she ene gyön yu chwa ni mi sin ne do she ne da nyam ne nan de jebu ta le ya da da ene 천순 일에等一些是差异吧천순 일고 탑도的一些差距都是一般마란소에 다 가다시 타고 그 생산 탐지하러 아니 디시시비 직선 예바 인도 자네 에노 그게 점밖에나 에노 디시시비 천순 일에 탑치에等一些呢是差出来是예바 인도 자네 에나 에노 타이가 말했는데 그 탐지 아니 천순 일고 탑도等一些그 산지 아니 왜 사리야 뭐야 제도 다게니 그다지
So, focusing upon these sentient beings who are around you, you should reinforce your compassion and love towards them, and then redirect your attention towards the Buddhas in front of you, and then reflect that these great beings, fully enlightened beings, in the past, previously were like myself and like the sentient beings around me, full of weaknesses and full of faults and obscurations of the mind and so on. However, as a result of having taken initiative by themselves, that they have embarked upon a spiritual path which has eventually led them to their full awakening and overcoming of their limitations, faults, and obscurations and so on. And so much so that now they have become the embodiment of all the perfections of wisdom, compassion, and energy. And think that, and compare their situation with ourselves, and also the sentient beings around you, and think that if we make on our part the initiative that is necessary, if we on our part take the step, then just like these Buddhas, we also, all of us, the sentient beings around myself and so on, we all of us possess that potential for enlightenment, full enlightenment, the Buddha nature, the seed for enlightenment. Therefore, develop a deep conviction and also develop the aspiration that may I and also all other sentient beings attain full enlightenment. And it is for this objective that you must develop the determination that in order to fulfill this aspiration, today I am enhancing my capacity for compassion and developing a kind heart.
다디 셰도 너리야지 사상시야지 구야리 다들어야 양라 든지권에 다 사상 저거 정하시 양라 든지야지 아니 차선이야라 저거들이야라 아니 샹거야라 이란이야라 중국고야라 양아들도 소들이야라 뭐야라지 양라 든부두시.
However, before we actually generate the kind heart, the mind for enlightenment, we should first prepare ourselves, our mental capacity and our mental state for such a realization. And this preparation would be done within the framework of what is known as the 7 limbs of practices, which include paying homage or salutations to the Buddhas and great beings, and then making offerings to them, disclosing our wrongdoings and purifying them, and developing a sense of rejoice and admiration in the positive and wholesome acts done by oneself and others, and also requesting the fully enlightened beings to show the path to enlightenment, and requesting the Buddhas not to enter into nirvana, and finally dedicating all the merits that you accumulate, the positive energy that you create towards the objective of attaining full enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So the recitation that I will be doing is an extract from Avatamsaka Sutra. So those who can join in the recitation, please do so, and those who cannot, since the recitation will be in Tibetan, you should reflect upon these 7 aspects of the practices.
Sambo Jeve Melan Dodake, Jawa Tamje Yiji Ngozon to Shinge Duni Lura Debaye, Jawa Guna Raducha, Luji Dena Duni Sanjana, Sanje Zaji Vena Shubat, Teda Shuji Yena Maluba, Tamje Jawa Dake Kawan, Teda Maba Mise Jazuna, Yangi Yana Jazu Dagunji, Jawa Gunji Yenden Rajeshin, Dewa Sheva Tamje Dake, Meda Tamba Tewa Tamba Ta, Sinye Namda Chuba Dujota, Mame Shadan Dobu Tamba Ye, Jawa Teda Lani Chewa, Nasa Tamba Namda Tijata, Shime Puma Ravanyamba, Kwebe Java Baba Chogunji, Jawa Teda Lani Chewa Ye, Cheba Kana Lame Jajewa, Teda Jawa Tamje Laya, Sambo Jela Tebe Dodake, Jawa Guna Chanza Chewa, Deja Shetan Timo Wangene, Luda Ngata Tishin Ye, Deva Dage, Jiva Jijeba, Teda Tamje Dage Susosha, Chachi Jawa Guna Sanje Se, Ranje Namda Lodam Melo, Toa Gunje Sonam Kala Yang, Teda Gunje Jeso Dayena, Kana Chachi Jiden Jumena, Chanju Rimba Sanje Masha, Kombo Teda Dage Tamje La, Kolo Lana Meva Goa Gun, Yang Dedun Kanshin Teda La, Toa Guna Fishin De, Gaba Shinge Duni Shuba Yang, Dage Tamu Raja Sohaji, Sanza Wada Shujin Shabada, Jesu Yiran Gujin Soha, Gawa Chunse Dage Chisaba, Tamje Lobe Chanju Shenpo. sho ye dang go ro ra na me dang la ga ne ya da ya me
다시 산재 쳐서만 차순 좀 되는지 다 되게 접선 좋아다 심기의 이유를 세도요 자수들
We will first do a recitation of a verse which is to reinforce our taking refuge in the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and also reinforcing our generation of the mind for enlightenment.
산재 저도
소ye jana la jan ju ba do da ne ja zo che da ye jen so ye ve sa nam ge ro la pen je san ye ro ba sho
산재 저도
so ye jana la jan ju ba do da ne ja zo che da ye jen so ye ve sa nam ge ro la pen je san ye ro ba sho
산재 저도
so ye jana la jan ju ba do da ne ja zo che da ye jen so ye ve sa nam ge ro la pen je san ye ro ba sho
大家呢这样子说的差不多
I believe that this yellow slip has been distributed.
vale
The smaller one.
어두두두두 다음에 지금만 돼 시스템은 와 저는 전에 상반이 산재처를 들으라 자주님 무시고 딱과탄 그 시스템이 얘네 유 초순다 그러봐 얘네 심지어 탐제 얘네 시원 양하는 데에 얘네 살아야 그래야 제도 얘네 뒤지 개발 얘네 뒤상 맞게 지지 인구 말을 하는 게就是适当的，가서 그게 결명 고마지리야 이 캐시 산대에 최신 산바 좀 많이 봐. 소소는 천안도 고반 영시시니 나의 모두 지인이 도시就是
On this paper, there are three verses. The first verse states that I shall take refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then it states the purpose or the objective for which you are taking the refuge, which is to be of benefit or to be of service to all other sentient beings. And also it states the time, that you are not going for refuge just for a day or just for a month or some sort of a specific period of time, but rather all times, so until the attainment of full enlightenment. And when we speak of taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, we should not have a notion of sort of giving away your power of judgment or giving away your responsibility, but rather the meaning of going for refuge is that what you are stating here is that just as you, the Buddha, have fully attained full enlightenment, so do I seek the similar realization to be of service to others. That's the understanding of taking refuge one must have. So let us recite the first verse together. Repeat after me. So those amongst the audience, those who are practicing Buddhists, when you do the repetition, do it with folded palms. So while reflecting upon the points that I just mentioned, you should repeat after me. Of course, I'll be reciting in Tibetan and then you repeat in English. With the wish to free all beings. I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
大把的大人就是去，
until the attainment of full enlightenment,
若能真的上百亿，
with the wish to free all beings.
三界学堂跟着了，
I shall always call for refuge
享受宁波奇迹吧，
to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha,
大把的大人就是去，
until the attainment of full enlightenment,
若能真的上百亿，
with the wish to free all beings.
三界学堂跟着了，
I shall always call for refuge
享受宁波奇迹吧，
to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha,
大把的大人就是去，
until the attainment of full enlightenment.
哎呀，但这个就是着去，但是呢，那么新就是就是在呢，这个甚至他们就是哪里，就是你天生那个他特别给你三界一等你别的说的主要的等你就给你三界，那三界突然看了的话呢，就是着了，差的要的，那这身体可多了，这边其他都怕塞了等，那定的，西的名字堂姐的，专门生产团队的，三件轮流来就是做不成就生意都是钱，我的这个，要啥的时候能帮不了下你太讲了，他也个那个是他们这，东西有的接吧嘞，当然东西有的接吧是东西就牛毛太下关，趴下，对你那区别别什么的接吧，这他们这老怕用数塞的三件就好吧，特别是切度，对吧？马上就不忘的，他把切印上的线，他的第一出来。
So with that, we have taken refuge in the three jewels, and now the next verse states the actual generation of the mind for enlightenment. So what is being done here is that you are, in some sense, strengthening the refuge that you have taken, which, as I stated earlier, is not simply giving away your responsibility for your actions, but rather aspiring to attain the state of Buddhahood, which is the embodiment of the perfection of wisdom, compassion, and energy, and you seek that for the benefit of all sentient beings. So in the second verse, when you do the repetition, you must reflect upon the meaning of the verse, which states that being enthused by compassion and wisdom, today in Buddha's presence, I shall generate the mind of enlightenment, which is I shall seek the state of the Buddhahood, the state of full enlightenment, so that I shall be in a position to be of service and to be of benefit to all other sentient beings.
第十五，第二的人说了个九的，进入技术短时说了个九的，第十去学，大可能说了个牛的，话呢，生松呢，要用出来。
So this will also be sort of followed by the third verse, which is in fact a verse from Bodhisattva Charyavatara, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So the generation of Bodhicitta will be done by reciting these two verses together.
当然，他有那些，他做强巴的年纪，修差不呀，三等。第一条呢，是调完了那边，到我对台湾，他讲我都超过年，我对台湾。第一个松子这他呢，写到讲了，什么叫他们这个写到南面说上个国吧，主要70300，什么时候就结合了。当然，什么叫他们家那个谈的中领三级，他都是呢，大家你们认为的嘛，什么时候这些，你就去说。
So, as before, you should reinforce your compassion and love for all sentient beings, and also the deep admiration that you have felt towards the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and the aspiration to attain their state and emulate their examples. These three factors of mind, love, compassion, and your admiration to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, these three factors combined, then you should develop a sense of confidence and also a courage that I will seek the state of full enlightenment so that I can be of benefit to other sentient beings. And you should have that kind of a very strong sense of engagement and strong sense of confidence. And it is it is in such a state of mind that you should generate this kind heart. In brief, the point here is to resolve yourself, to develop within yourself a kind heart, a warm heart, an altruistic mind, which will motivate you to work for the benefit of other sentient beings.
다시는 전들이 그냥 서로가 발바디 사순체, 비슈게 서로가 타만디 사순체다.
So the repetition will be done by first repeating the second verse 3 times and then the third verse 3 times.
다시 서로가 발바디 지도자는 쓴지 문시순야체, 서로가 타만디 굉장히 쓴 송은 데이터에 가서 그게 인도 체제를 따라 담지 담으셔서 찾아.
So in a way, these two repetitions is like saying by doing the repetition of the second verse, you are actually generating the kind heart and the mind for enlightenment. And when you do the third repetition, in a way you are strengthening and stabilizing that generated mind, and also in some sense making a pledge that you would uphold it as much as you can. So repeat after me. Enthused by compassion and wisdom, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Enthused by compassion and wisdom, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Enthused by compassion and wisdom, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So repeat after me the third verse, which is to enable you to enhance your confidence and courage. As long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the world. As long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the world. As long as space endures, and as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide to dispel the miseries of the world. So with this, the generation of the mind for enlightenment has actually taken place. Now that we have participated in this ceremony for generating the mind of enlightenment and